We have to act like it's live, though.
Yeah. Now we're live.
Now we're live. Oh my God, it's alive. Alive, like Dr. Frankenstein. I feel like Dr. Frankenstein. We brought something to life.
All right, let's do this.
You guys, welcome everybody to my very first podcast on So What About Crypto? This is it. We're streaming live. This is kind of the behind the scenes feed that you're watching. So if you're watching this right now, you're going to see all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. Like if we lose the signal, you're going to hear us say, oh crap, and try to get it back on. You're going to see all the stuff that happens before the production value is added to the final product and edited with music and fun stuff and video and all that. But right now, it's kind of like what I used to do when I was doing newscasts for fun. We would put up our phones, mount them on little tripods, and do Facebook Live so that when the newscast would go to commercial break, we would still be live streaming on Facebook Live, and we would be able to interact with everybody and say, hi, thanks for watching the news. And they would see all the stuff we do in between commercials, like get lipstick off our teeth or reapply makeup and all that other fun stuff. But anyway, welcome you guys to the very first show. So What About Crypto? I'm joined by not only one of the most awesome people on the planet, but my business partner, my co-host and executive producer of the podcast, Bill Degnan.
Hey, Elsa.
Billy.
Here we are doing that. Finally doing an episode.
We're doing
trying to get you to do this forever.
We're doing the thing. Okay,
Yeah,
so Bill
the thing
has
with
been
the thing, you know,
the thing with the deal and the stuff and the lights and everything. But you guys, Bill has been really bugging me. I would say nagging me maybe a little bit for almost a year to do a podcast. And I didn't want to do it because everybody and their brother is doing a podcast. And besides, we were shooting our show, Adventures in Crypto, and you can find that on adventuresincrypto.tv. But anyway, I felt like we had our hands full with that. And I just don't want to be another podcast. I really don't. There's so many out there on so many things. And I just didn't feel like it was worth our time, considering time is so precious. But anyway, he finally convinced me to do it.
I did. I bugged her. What else are we going to do? We're locked
What else
down.
are we
Everybody's locked
doing?
down during this COVID-19 thing. So
Right. And that's the thing that really changed my mind, because if anybody has seen some of the clips from our show, if you haven't, you can go to our website. But we've traveled all over the world. We've been to Japan and Spain and Ibiza, and we've been all over the country in various parts. We've been to Crow Nation. The Native Americans, Crow Indians, let us on their reservation, and they gave us that honor and trust to let us on there to shoot stories with them. And so we've kind of been everywhere. We went to John McAfee's house.
yeah, I've got it right
fun.
here. I'll show you. Check this out.
Oh yeah. So if you guys know about John McAfee, if you don't know anything about Bitcoin or any of that cryptocurrency stuff that we're going to talk about, John McAfee of the virus protection McAfee. That's him. Okay. And if you know anything about him, he's eccentric to say the least. He is his own person.
Yes, indeed.
We, one of the best shoots that we did for Adventures in Crypto was with him. It was just a blast. We went to his house, and his wife, who's also a badass, to be able, first of all, to handle him. And I think he would probably agree. Remember, Bill, he walks around shirtless a lot.
Yeah, I do recall that.
Okay. And
yeah, I recall that there were copious amounts of alcohol all around the kitchen.
Oh yeah. So there's a full bar everywhere.
Pretty much a full bar on the kitchen.
Yeah, the kitchen was the bar. Really, it was like the kitchen was secondary. The bar was first. But he had a tattoo on his chest, and I kind of chuckled and said, "Oh, that's so sweet." The tattoo said, "Don't fuck with my wife." And I went, "Oh." I went, That's really sweet for you to tell everybody to leave your wife alone. And he goes, "Oh no, that's for me." He goes, "I need to remind myself not to fuck with my wife
Yeah,
because
they
she's
were a
gonna
lot of
kill
fun. That was
me."
one memorable day, I will say that.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
do recall that, we were lucky enough that John let us come over and shoot at his house and spend the day,
Yeah.
and he fed us and got us a little drunk,
Oh
to say
yeah.
the least. But he also, yeah, I remember telling he and Janice right before we left, I was like, people can say what they want about those two, but I have seldom come across a
Mhm.
couple that looks more in love than those
Yeah.
two.
They
And,
are.
I
They're
because you could see it in the way they interacted off screen, so to speak.
yeah, which
They,
people didn't get to see like we did.
people with guns all over the place, his crew, they they have, loaded submachine guns
Oh yeah.
everywhere and
Yep.
cocked and ready.
And these
Dog,
guys that are protecting him that he has
yeah.
hired, he has a full-time security detail, former Army Rangers. Was there a SEAL? Or
I'm
was
sure
there?
there were. I
I
mean,
think
there was a
I,
little bit of everything. They were all
yeah,
top notch,
they were all like special ops type
special ops
people.
guys, really
Yes,
nice. But they're
all of them.
in the midst of all of that, they would just be off to the side of the room, staring in each other's eyes
Right.
and talking. And I can,
Right.
and I'll admit, I've always got these headphones on when we're shooting. As you know, I'm monitoring audio, but he was, mic'd up the whole
Oh,
time.
yeah.
So, I'm sorry to say, I actually heard a few conversations, but they were always just very loving. And I don't know, that was my impression. I really was impressed by their relationship. So,
Yeah, me
but
too.
you know what?
They're fun.
I want to let's go back to why we're even doing this and how we got here, which is a pretty crazy story, if you ask me.
Oh, totally. I think it's kind
Yeah.
of a miracle that
Well,
you
who
and
are you,
I
by the way? I mean,
who am
you're
I
Elsa Ramon, of course, but who the hell is that?
I really don't kn I'm still trying to figure out who I am. Um, I don't think I ever will, but I I spent 21 years, as a television news anchor and reporter. I've worked for all the networks, and, the last 4 years of my career in that
And
lifetime.
you have two Emmys I can see in the background there.
Yes, I have 2. I earned 2 Emmys, those took a long time to get because I was nominated various times throughout my career and never won. Was starting to feel like the Susan Lucci of Emmys, but for those of you who don't know, she was a soap star who was like continually nominated for these soap Emmys. I don't know how many times, countless times, and she
Yeah.
never won. And I wasn't it finally towards the end of her career. Did she finally win one? I can't remember. My mom was a big soap
Yeah.
star
Hopefully that's
fan, and
no foreshadowing for you. I mean,
yeah.
you're just starting.
Right. But anyway, so, I was in television news for 21 years, and, the last 5 or so of those years, I was just becoming so disenchanted with what we covered, how we covered it on a local level. I was just sick of chasing trees down in a storm and doing car chases here in LA. Those are the, a plenty. They run a plenty here in LA.
Yeah.
They're plentiful, I should say. And just the way we chased meaningless stuff. But I didn't have another passion. I didn't know what else to do because this is all I've done. And it wasn't until I learned about what blockchain is and Bitcoin and really everything that comes with it, good and bad, that that made me realize that I'm I don't this is what I want to do. I am so fascinated by this technology and this cryptocurrency and what it can do for us as a society and people, especially marginalized people. I thought that was it. That was my epiphany. That was my aha moment, as I like to say. I like to ask people what was their aha moment when they got into this
Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
crazy space. But
I think
that was it.
everybody in this space, goes through, admits to that. It was a little crazy for me too. And I actually years ago in 2012, I think I started mining. That's how far back I go, but that doesn't make me a crypto OG or anything. I was one of the foolish people who kind of quit mining about as quickly as I started. I started mining Litecoin, which is what some people call Satoshi Lite or Bitcoin Lite, because I, had just bought some new editing systems and they have a lot of downtime sometimes. I was like, well, shoot, I should be able to make some money and pay off these computers with some mining, and started mining Litecoin. Like I would, set it to mine overnight, and I got a little bit of Litecoin, and then I just stopped, went on to other things. I was like, well, I just spent, a week mining Litecoin, and I think I got about 80 cents worth of Litecoin at the time. And I thought, well, this isn't worth it.
You're like,
And
this is
then,
taking a lot of energy to mine. And by the
yeah,
way, if you're hearing these terms and you're just starting out saying to yourself, okay, fine, I'll start consuming information about Bitcoin and all this stuff, please don't feel intimidated by some of the terms we're
yeah,
using, because just a year and a half ago, I didn't know what any of this meant. And I was very intimidated by all of this and all of these terms. And so mining, basically, you're using your power from your computer, your hard drives, to validate transactions. People who are doing transactions on this
yeah,
open distributed ledger, they're buying things, they're transacting, they're trading crypto and all that kind of
yeah.
stuff.
But the
Your
average person can't do that with Bitcoin, which is, that's the
right.
kind of the cornerstone of Bitcoin. It's a proof of work.
Yes.
These computers are proving their work and getting rewarded
And they
Bitcoin
get
for it.
rewarded. Yes.
But
So
you
that's
got to
called
be a
mining.
rich
Yeah.
mofo to do that now, and
Because it costs a lot to
tons of
run
money,
that
tons
much
of
power.
electricity,
Yeah.
all of that. And so I was already priced out of the game at that point when I started, and it was also, I work with all Apple gear, so Bitcoin doesn't really fit with that, but Litecoin did, and but it just didn't seem worth it
Right.
at the time. But I wasn't one of those people who I think saw it then. But then shortly before I met you, I, our mutual friend that got us together on this, he said, "Hey, what do you know about, crypto? I've got somebody who wants some help with marketing and some things they're doing." And so we started talking a lot about that, and I was like, "Well, all I know is I used to mine it, but I haven't really followed it, And this was after that massive, sort of gold rush back in the late 2017, when everybody went crazy and the price went up to 20,000.
Right.
I just was completely ignoring it. I had a friend who was hitting me up all the time saying, "You're watching this price, you're watching this price." I was like, "Well, why should I? I don't have any." So I kind of
Yeah.
missed the boat, is the way I felt. But then months later, when I started talking about marketing some projects, or helping and consulting, and then it seemed to me every time that our friend Sean would go, "Hey man, there's a bar in Japan that they only take crypto. It's called the NIM bar. How could we market that as part of this project?" I was like, being a media producer, my mind went to, well, it's simple. We need to go to Japan, film this. We need to film people actually doing it, actually using cryptocurrency, actually interfacing with it, not, just talking about it as this esoteric, intangible group of digits, which is what it kind of is. But,
Yeah.
bringing it to have people see how real people in the world are affected by it. And I think what really charged me up, and this is a recommendation I have for anyone who's sort of uninitiated and doesn't know a lot about crypto yet, but's curious, just Google Andreas Antonopoulos, and we'll put this in the show notes. But I started listening to a couple of his lectures, and this is a man who's lived on Bitcoin, lived and traded with it and been paid, in crypto, travels the world as sort of an evangelist of Bitcoin
Mhm.
and different, the entire industry, so to speak. And he's very effective at sort of boiling this stuff down and helping you see
Yeah.
the possibilities and
He's
how
an
it can.
OG.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
complete
Um,
Bitcoin OG. This guy
very brilliant.
is, yeah,
Yeah, and so I
the real
started
deal.
listen to any of his things that he's done, and you'll learn. And there, if you're going to see a lot on YouTube, it's all out of sequence, obviously. I always found it amazing to, listen to something that may be from like 2014, and then I'm thinking, "Oh my God, this is crazy. This is about to happen," and realize that it had already happened, And so he kind of has been ahead of his time in a lot of ways. So that's one recommendation, but that really started getting me really excited about it, and um, enough to start talking to my wife about it. And then I recall one day that you called me out of the blue with Sean and said, "Hey, Billy, you want to travel the world and do some shows about crypto?" And I was like, "Hell yeah!" I
Well,
didn't
that's
even
how
think
you and I
about it.
met because Sean,
Yeah,
our mutual
yeah,
friend, um, brought us together because I was still working at CBS at the time, and I was already plotting my escape from television news. And
which I knew nothing about. I
right,
was
right,
kind of
you,
shocked. I'm like,
yeah.
"Good God, you're going to leave CBS to travel with me?"
But you're that awesome,
Oh
Bill.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
why.
it's evident.
Totally. But but yeah, so that's how our relationship started, through our mutual friend brought us together because we all had that in common. We all started learning about
Hmm.
everything about this space, Bitcoin and blockchain and all that kind of stuff. And we're being enlightened to the things it can do and it can't do and what they hope to do. And, as a journalist, I always felt like one of the biggest things I get satisfaction from is bringing a result to someone, mostly justice. And I initially got into this television news business because I wanted to be able to help people bring them resources or get them justice or something that has a
Hmm.
positive outcome. I mean, that wasn't happening for a long time, and that's why I became so disenchanted. But I felt like the reason why Bitcoin and everything that comes with it felt so right to me was because there's a lot of leveling the playing field when you talk about all the things it could possibly do and the underlying technology, blockchain. And to me, leveling the playing field for the everyday person and having them enlightened to how we've been living financially and what we could be living financially in the future with this, to me, that was the ultimate justice, to get out of the debt slavery we're all a part
Yeah.
of, and really understand that we're not necessarily as free as we think we are when it comes to finances and things like that, which I know nothing about. I have no background on. I was the worst at finances. I could never balance a checkbook. I was a lit major from UC Irvine. This whole world to me was very foreign, and it was intimidating. It still is. There are things when I'm learning that I feel like, wow, I don't know this, and I look like a moron. But that's the whole reason why we're doing the podcast, because it's okay to feel that way.
Yeah,
It's
you're
very
curious, that's
intimidating.
what counts. You're curious,
Yes,
and
you
so
want to
am I.
learn. That's all you need to know.
Mhm.
That's all you need.
Yeah.
Forget everybody else who makes you feel like, you're an idiot because you don't know this stuff. Just ask.
Mhm.
That's somebody else's problems and insecurities, not yours, and don't let
Yeah.
them make you feel
Well,
that way.
you and I we've been pretty lucky, I think, because we only got into this, scene about, less than 2 years ago,
Yeah.
and it's been roughly 2 years, I guess, since we really started talking about putting this together, and, we've once we hit the road, shooting and traveling, I think I was amazed at how quickly we got to know a lot of the people that we had seen on, YouTube, things, and people speaking at conferences and the
Hmm.
like, because we're out there trying to get the same types of stories. So I always found that everybody in this space was very sort of approachable and
Yes. And
and
we're talking about, and
warm
Bill,
and
be clear.
welcoming. Yeah.
You're talking about the people who are stars in this space,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
John McAfee and the Bobby Lees, which we'll explain
Yeah, some
throughout
of them are
all the podcasts.
very
Yeah,
colorful
you
people,
know.
like, I'll never forget, having coffee with Brock Pierce
Oh my
on
God, this
at
story. Yes, I
5 in the
remember you told
morning on a
this.
ship in the Mediterranean.
We were at a
Um,
blockchain conference that was on a ship. It was a
yeah,
cruise in the Mediterranean, which we could do a whole show of that by itself,
yeah,
because whoa, that was crazy.
yeah.
But some of the big heavy hitters were on that ship on that conference, and you had this really surreal experience with
Yeah,
Brock
well,
Pierce.
it was
Look him
pleasant
up
to
if you
say the
don't know who
least.
he. Yeah, it
Well,
was
yeah,
fun.
look up Brock Pierce.
Brock Pierce.
He's, somewhat controversial, but I will say this, I think if you dig into where he's been and what he's done and hear him speak about it back in the early, early, early days of Bitcoin, I was amazed that the sort of foresight the guy has had and how involved he's been
Same.
in Bitcoin. And this is a guy who really got it. And I think
Yeah, he's brilliant.
from gaming and transferring of items from games, and he was already working into that, and he saw the possibility. So that's a guy who, he's very what's the word I'm looking for? Eccentric, to say the
Yes.
least, and looks it and dresses the part. So I'm an early riser usually, and so 5 in the morning on this cruise ship, I'm like, I got to find some coffee, man. So I'm making my way to the deck, the very top deck by the pool, and hardly anybody's out except for about 6 or 8 guys in a circle of chairs with a bucket of beers between them, and they're carrying on. And Brock's sort of holding court with all of them, and I had just read an article about him in Rolling Stone, and they said, he lives in Puerto Rico, and he's always got, other crypto people around him, and he's trying to do great things down there for the people of Puerto Rico, but that
Mhm.
he always has a boom box, so to, a Bluetooth type music player, so that he can share the music he loves with other people. And I thought that was crazy. It's like a guy walking around with the old boom box or
Oh,
something.
yeah, like
And
yeah,
so
that's great.
as I'm hanging out there on the deck drinking my coffee, and I just somehow Brock, and it ended up just being Brock and I sitting there shooting the shit,
Which is
right
so
before
weird.
breakfast. And he's really ripped. And I'm just like having this conversation at times, I thought, with myself, because he's just carrying on singing along to some songs that he's just playing as loud as he can, and we're sitting right next to each other, and he would talk to me for a little bit, and then I would say something back, and he would just start dancing and jamming and carrying on. And I'm like, well, I guess I'm in this conversation by myself. And then like 45 seconds later, he'd snap out of it and look me in the eye and answer whatever I had just said to him, like, he hadn't missed a lick. But he was very generous with his time. He gave me a little button that I'm not really sure the symbology of it, but he's really into symbology. So I still have that, and I saw a lot of the people,
That
like
was a nice
McAfee and other
gesture.
people wearing those around the ship. I think they were having a sort of a powwow of, crypto luminaries on an island after that cruise, and that
Oh, that's right.
everybody went
Yeah,
to
yeah.
that was wearing it. So
Right,
next time I
right, I
see
remember.
Brock, I'm going to ask him, what was the significance of that? But yeah, that was crazy. So it's the weirdest cup of coffee I've ever had.
Especially
And
since he was having beer and
yeah,
you were having
I'm
coffee.
pretty
He hadn't
certain that
he hadn't gone to bed yet, and you had just
yeah.
gotten up.
Well, I'm pretty certain the next time I meet Brock, it'll be the first time he meets me, because he won't recall that conversation. But
You're like,
yeah,
"Remember the time on the ship in the
hmm
Mediterranean? Me,
it
you,
was
music,
interesting.
no?"
But
Yeah.
and so you and I are talking a lot about these crypto luminaries and
Mhm.
characters, but there's a lot of really brilliant people in the space, and I
Right,
think you and I
right.
have witnessed a lot of big money, big tech coming in even just the past 2 years. So there's been a lot of change. There's been a lot of we've seen the underbelly of some things too. I think it's opened our eyes a lot. There's been a lot of scams. There's
Yep.
been hacks. There's been the whole industry's really sort of had to come of age in a way, in its
And
own way.
really answer to that, and as the industry should answer to that, because there if you think about it, wherever there's money, there are going to be people who don't have good intentions. There are gonna be scams, there are gonna be people trying to gobble up everything they can and do everything they can to, cheat you. But that's with anything. I mean,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
with
Be
US
careful.
dollars, with euros, with cryptocurrency. So, I think another thing that you and I are trying to do is help people understand that cryptocurrency and Bitcoin isn't inherently, uh, uh, dangerous or unwise or connected to criminal activity. All money that has value is connected to criminal activity.
Yeah, yeah.
People buy drugs with dollars and euros and whatever else,
Hmm.
and whatever else crimes they commit and use money to pay for.
Yeah,
It's no different. It's just that it's unfamiliar, and that is scary. When
yeah.
people don't understand something, they don't want any part of it, and I understand that, and especially when in its early days it was connected to all these nefarious things like Silk Road, which was in the news way back in the day when people were the early adopters of Bitcoin were using it to uh, basically do criminal activity and solicit uh, everything from hitmen to prostitutes or
Yeah.
whatever. And that's kind of it was its first reputation. It's not that, and we want to be, but we don't ignore the fact that it's there. And just like anything that has value, there are going to be people who are going to try their best to scam you, and unfortunately, that's the reality. And we're
Yeah.
just trying to bridge that gap for you to understand that
That's
there's
true.
so much
So
more
let's talk
to it than
about this
that.
podcast. What about
Okay.
this podcast? I mean, let's tell. I want people to know. I mean, it's not just going to be Elsa on screen or me. Count on
No.
this is probably the most you'll ever see of me in the show. But we wanted to do a show that just kind of introduce Elsa and what we're going to be doing, and
And
talk a
you,
little
I
bit
mean, you're a
about what we've
huge
been
part of
doing.
this, Bill. As much as
Well,
you
I'm
don't want to
your
be on
your
camera,
your
but
camera shy sidekick, but
uh,
I'm also a producer in a way. I'm literally turning knobs and bringing up clips and things and graphics for the show. And we're streaming this live to YouTube and Facebook, and we'll be streaming it to LinkedIn, sort of as an opportunity to, hit all the channels we can as quickly as we can, but then we double back later in the day and record in sort of edit the audio for
mhm,
podcast distribution. And so we're trying to get on all the channels we can. And this, I've, like I told you, we once this COVID thing breaks, we want to get back out on the road and start
yeah,
getting more footage. But we find ourselves lucky enough to be able to get time with some very brilliant people in the space, and maybe not even what I would call brilliant people, but just the everyday person who, that's part of what we're trying to bring to the world, is to
mhm,
show everyday people leveraging this and how it's in changing their lives. So as we do that, we want to be able to pull them aside after an on-camera interview and say, hey, let's talk for 30 minutes on just audio and make that a
yeah.
podcast. So
And just
that's part of
casual,
what we're
get it,
up to
yeah, and
here.
get a sense of the people that we're doing stories on video and shooting and producing. But with a podcast, just kind of let our hair down and let
Yeah.
it flush out a little
And
bit
it's
more,
more
so you can,
immediate.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, and so that's the goal, to marry the two together when we're able to travel again.
Yeah.
Our
And
show requires extensive travel to all over the country and all over the world, and obviously, right now because of the pandemic, we can't do that. So
yeah, yeah. So
here we are.
tell me this, what were the the 3 most memorable parts of the shooting we just did, in the past year or so? What stands out the most?
Um, wow, going to Japan was fantastic because I truly felt like 100% a foreigner. I didn't know any of the language. Obviously, I couldn't read Japanese. I couldn't understand anything. I couldn't even, it was just, I was a complete fish out of water. And I liked that because it really forced me to kind of immerse myself in the culture and the food and just really absorb it all and appreciate it all. It was really a fun experience.
Yeah, right
So
there
we
you
ate a
are.
lot.
There's some of your footage I'm looking at right now, some of the
I'm
footage of you in Japan, like, oh, yeah, the cat cafe.
Oh
This is
god, the
this is
cat
just a clip
cafe.
of
So
some
if you guys
highlights, but
so Japanese, they love cats, which I love because I love cats. But if you know a little bit about the culture there, they love fun, quirky things. And one of the fun, quirky things that there are a lot of are cat cafes, where you can go to a cafe, get coffee, tea, whatever, and you spend time with cats who need homes. So it's kind of like a shelter, but they get to play and you get to interact with them. And if people want to, they can adopt from these cat cafes or not. But the
there's a
cat,
picture of you in the cat cafe.
I was going crazy because I loved it in there. But many people can't either maybe afford the extra expense of a pet, or maybe their place is too small and they feel like it's not enough room for a pet, so they go and indulge in these cat cafes, and that was
Hey,
one of
I
my
recall
favorites.
it wasn't just cats. I remember like raccoon cafes and turtle cafes and snake cafes. They have them
Yeah,
all over there.
yeah, I think I blocked those out because I just didn't.
Yeah.
I was just focused on the cat cafes, but that was totally memorable. Of course, the nightlife when you see all the lights, it's just like it was in the movies where you see
Yeah,
it's
the
like
bullet trains.
yes, the bullet trains
One of my,
and
one of my most favorite things I remember was, being, my wife did actually accompany us on that trip and that leg of it. And because, she always told me she wanted to go there. And I knew if I didn't take her on this trip, I wouldn't be married much longer. But,
because that was a dream of hers, right? She really always
oh,
wanted to
yeah,
go to
and she
Japan.
was a great crew member too. She kept me in line and,
She's awesome.
like, and just having her there, that made all the difference to me. But and I remember we shot at the NEM bar. Like, I'll have to try to pull the NEM bar up here, but, you know, the NEM bar was super, super small. And NEM, in case people don't know, is a cryptocurrency blockchain developed in Japan, and there's a bar there that only takes cryptocurrency. There's you buying a drink,
Yeah, so you
with
could only
Ninja
pay.
from
Yeah.
NEM,
We had
and
a tour guide. He was with us. Great guy.
yeah, and that bar, what you see there is just about the entire bar. I mean, it's so super
Oh
small,
yeah, it was
so
tight. It
I
was
just never
really tight.
I'll never forget being there, and we had all our gear and our crew and everything. We could not leave a single case inside anywhere. Like, there was no room in that bar for any of our gear. We just had to come in with our cameras and a little bit of lighting.
Mhm.
And so, being that we've brought all this gear that's very expensive, there was nowhere to put it. And I didn't have any extra crew people to watch it. Normally, you have somebody that can hang out and watch the
Right.
gear and it's
Mhm.
parked somewhere off to the side. Everybody can kind of keep an eye on it. Well, I'm like, "Oh my god, we're about to go do this, like, 2-hour shoot in this bar, and all of my gear is outside on the
Yeah.
sidewalk."
Yeah.
It
'Cause
scared me to death, but I was like,
yeah.
"I don't have a choice." So, I remember my wife's like, "Where do we put it?" I'm like, "Well, just put it out here on the step." So people trying to get in the bar had to, like, literally step over all our camera cases and, we had a lot of extra gear there. Then, and the whole time we're shooting, I'm like, "Oh my god, everything that we've brought, and spent a lot of money to bring, and it's just out there on the street and anybody
Yeah.
could take it." But that was the beauty of Japan for me, was like there didn't seem to be any theft,
Right.
and I
Everyone
was
was so
just completely
respectful.
amazed by that.
Everyone, yeah, everyone was so respectful.
Yeah,
Everyone was just polite, and it's so crammed, especially if you get on the bullet trains or you're going into the underground system uh, in Japan. It's almost like a whole different city down below the city,
yeah,
and there's
yeah,
stores and
train
shops in
stations are
there and
amazing.
train stations. It's crazy, but even in those situations, everyone is so polite and they're so nice.
Yeah,
I really believe that I could probably leave my purse
yeah,
in a store and come back the next day and it would still be there because the whole mentality is, well, it's not mine. Why would I
yeah,
take it?
yeah, I
So
was amazed. My wife said she would live there. I was like, "Really?"
yeah, I remember Lisa
Yeah,
saying she loved it. Your wife, Lisa, got up. That's Bill's wife, and you guys, she would run at like 5 in the morning before we started
yeah.
shooting. Go do a
She'd
run.
get me up to go with her, and I was like, "I'm not chancing any running, I'm just gonna walk,
Yeah.
try to catch up with you." But, I remember even on those walks, we'd be out early, and I'd see, like, a seven-year-old schoolgirl walking down the street and, in their school clothing, and I was like, in the United States, you just
Oh
would
no
not let
way!
your young child walk the streets of Atlanta or New York. I mean, this is Tokyo, this is downtown Tokyo, and she's just
Yeah.
walking, and I'm pretty, from where I was, I'm like, I can tell she's probably gotta walk a pretty good distance in this city, but that didn't seem to be an issue, and I
Mhm.
just was like, it was easy to start feeling safe there for sure.
Yeah.
Barcelona was not so much like that. I recall
No.
being warned many times, hold on to anything in
Yep.
your pockets.
Yep.
But that
Multiple
also
times
was an
throughout the day.
amazing, that to me, I think was probably my second most amazing, um, sort of thing, was that national day in Barcelona when they were demonstrating. See if I can pull that up. When they
So
were
now
demonstrating in the streets.
and I just wanna explain. So we were there, it's kind of like, Catalonia's sort of Independence Day, if we had to equate it to something called National Day. And this was totally by chance. This is one of the things we did not plan, but we happened to be there right in the middle of this National Day, as it's called. And there were 1 million people
Yeah,
out
look
on the
at that.
streets.
That was
And
my
it
view
was,
right there from the
it
top of
based
that building.
yeah, that you were shooting up there, and that was the view that you guys and all the crew got from up there. I was down below with my crew, with the other part of the crew shooting down below. But National Day basically is for the people of Catalonia. They're trying to gain sovereignty from Spain. And it's been an ongoing battle, and they are hoping to use the Catalonian people are hoping to use Bitcoin and blockchain technology to get that sovereignty away from Spain and have their own currency and their own government. And so this was a day for Catalonians to be out there on the streets protesting for their independence and fighting for their independence and showing respect for the political prisoners. There are Catalonian political prisoners who ran for office in Catalonia, and they were jailed by the government of Spain because Spain doesn't recognize Catalonia as its own country. They're fighting for that. And so the people who ran as Catalonians and ran for the Catalonian government, Spain doesn't consider that to exist. And so they imprisoned these people who won an election
Yeah, I
in
think that guy
Catalonia.
there is still in jail last time I checked, I think a
Yeah,
few
so
months
they're
ago.
political prisoners, but they're part of a revolution, and that's what they're trying to do. And so naturally, Bitcoin and blockchain and that type of technology appeal to them because that's one of the tools or some of the tools they're going to use to be able to separate themselves
Yeah.
at some point. They hope from Spain. But
Yeah, and
while we were there,
yeah, and
it
remember
was crazy.
we did spend some time with their IT minister who,
Hmm.
man, he was so dry when we interviewed him, and we saw him in later interviews with other people. He looked like he was on speed or something. But I'm like, this is the most straight laced, like, you know, the deepest voice. Well,
Yes.
here's what we will do in Catalonia,
Yeah, he was
but
very matter of fact.
rigid. And
Y
but he was very frank about that. Hey, if we're going to start our own, really, it's essentially starting our own country. If we get independence from Spain,
Mhm.
this is an opportunity to build a digital society. And so they're very in tune with the thought of how that can exist on a blockchain with,
Right.
people can sort of own their own identity and how they can provide services. So I was impressed at how he was looking at it as, government as a service provider, not a, you know, control mechanism, but,
Right.
competing for
Exactly.
providing services and being able to do it better than anyone else. So they're
The way government should be, not a
yeah,
controlling entity like you said, but a service. And I agree with you. But I also think part of his rigidity was the fact that they were just embarking on
yeah,
exploring all that. And I honestly think he just really didn't know very much about it yet. You fast forward a year later, we see him doing interviews with other people, and he's
yeah,
like, "This is
Davos
great.
or
I can't believe
something.
this, blah, blah, blah."
Yeah.
Like,
Well, maybe it's because he
hey,
was in his office and,
true,
official
maybe,
government building wearing a suit and tie in that case. But yeah, I
perhaps,
was I was
but
like, I remember seeing him that time later and telling you, I was like, well, why couldn't he have been more animated when we interviewed him? He looks more interesting now. But
get this guy a
anyway,
drink.
that was cool. That was cool. So, what? One thing that stands out to me, is the Crow Fair when we went to the Crow Fair in Montana,
Yeah.
which was amazing.
First of all, as you know, you can't just go onto any Indian reservation. You have to be invited and brought on by people who are members of the tribe. So I know you and I felt it was a huge honor that the Crow people trusted us and our crew to allow us onto the reservation
Yeah, for the Crow Fair.
for the Crow Fair. And it was their 100th Crow Fair. So it was a very special time for the Crow people, and it was just really awe-inspiring to be there. I can't thank the Crow people enough. They are
Yeah.
incredible.
Well, and we were here, I'll show you, we were hosted by, Cedric Black Eagle,
Mhm.
and you can tell the story about who, is associated with him.
So yeah, Cedric Black Eagle has a very tight relationship, is one way to put it, with President Barack Obama, and
Yeah, I think I've
uh,
got a picture of them or of Barack at actually speaking at the fair at the reservation there. That's
but
when they became brothers, right?
yes, so the Crow people made former President Obama an honorary brother uh, of the Crow Nation. So, from what I understand, Cedric, he's close with Obama, and
He's
they very much
also, I think,
respect
at the
him.
now when we were there, I think he was in charge of their water resources for the reservation.
Right,
Uh,
which is a very big deal, in, the Native Americans to have control of the water rights of the water that's on their land and not the federal government, the American federal government. That's a big deal. That gives them a lot of power, literally and figuratively. The Crow people have a plan with that power to also use it to their advantage, the water, hydropower, and create even more sovereignty for their nation through Bitcoin and cryptocurrency and blockchain technology. And because they have the rights to that water on their land, they're going to be able to use all that power for very, very little money. So this is going to
yeah.
help a truly disadvantaged and marginalized people.
Yeah, and we witnessed them being exposed to a sort of a digital governance system for themselves, and that was cool. I helped set that TP up. Actually, Cedric taught me and my brother who accompanied me on that trip. We got there a couple of days early, and so Cedric was setting up teepees, because he had probably 20 just in his camp, like right there. That's his camp,
Hmm.
and all those teepees were just in his little camp at the fair, and
Hmm.
he needed help putting one up, and so he let us. He needed help, so he and I and his grandson and my brother set it up, and we learned how to do it, which was really cool. And then we slept in it one night,
That's
which was
right. I forgot
awesome.
you guys did sleep in it.
That was awesome. But I will say, because it's a powwow and they're doing, they have drums and dancing and all of that going on.
Mhm.
It seemed like 24 hours a day. And so, you'd wake up at 1 in the morning and you'd hear all the
You hear the
drums going.
drums,
It
the boom,
was
boom, boom,
amazing.
boom, boom, boom. Yeah,
And
it's really
and then I
it was
remember,
incredible.
you wake up about 3 or 4 and it's kinda quiet, everybody had kinda settled in already, but out of nowhere, you would hear just like, like way off in the distance. It's
You
just like
wake up
these
with your
battle
heart pounding,
cries,
like, What happened?"
and I was like, "Holy cow, what is that?" I'd go back to sleep and I'd wake up and I'd hear it in another direction, and just some random, like, battle cry or something. I was like, "This is amazing." So
Yeah, that was
I
really
actually, this. I actually got a chance to go to that Crow Fair probably 30 years before as a
back in
drummer
your
in a
musician
in a
days.
country band, and I was a drummer in this country band, and we were playing at the Crow Rodeo. So,
Hey, I have yet to see pictures of that, by the way, of you in the country band back in the day. You gotta
well, I
produce
played in
some
a
of those
lot of bands.
pictures.
I played name a type of band, and I probably played in it except for like a thrash metal band or something. But pretty much everything else, I've done it. Anything from orchestras to reggae to country, blues, I've kind of played in all of them, jazz, funk. I mean,
Yeah,
music has taken me to a lot of places that, the average person doesn't get to inhabit. So
yeah.
it's been
Your
cool.
middle name is Funk. Billy Funk Degnan.
Yeah, I do like to get funky.
Get funky.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I would definitely agree. Crow people and the food and I just everything, the culture, the teepees.
that was
It was
cool.
pretty incredible
Yeah,
experience.
and to juxtapose that with the technology that was being introduced, which was actually in watching it, I think you said it in the show, it's like you're witnessing this history of
We
them
did.
getting to try these technologies that can change the entire world.
Yep.
That
And
was pretty
we got to
cool.
watch them do, try it out with their cell phones, buying things with the QR codes
With
and
their own
the crypt
currency
with their own
and
cryptocurrency that
yeah,
these phones were loaded with. It was for demo, and they were
voting.
just voting, which was a huge deal.
Yeah.
I don't think I need to explain it for the Native American people how important that is to be able to have a voice in
Yeah.
voting and land rights and things like that. All of that could be put on the blockchain and managed and verified and all that kind of stuff. And they got a chance to try
Mhm.
all of that with these phones. And you can't blame them. They were very distrusting of all of this, right?
Yeah.
Because they've been let down and hurt and screwed over so many times throughout history.
Yeah.
Why should they believe this? And after all of this happened, I was really amazed at how shockingly excited everybody was about this. I really couldn't
Yeah,
believe
they
it. I
were.
really thought that they were going to say, "Okay, yeah, that was kind of cool," and walk off. But they were truly energized by this, and we got to witness the history of them trying it for the very first time in
Yeah,
a teepee. I
it
mean,
was
what could be
awesome.
more authentic than that?
I was just so disappointed, and then it seemed like every time I had a crew on site to do some real shooting, it was raining, and we
Yeah.
couldn't really shoot because the B-roll there is just second to none to see the dancing and, like,
Yeah.
I think the only little bit I was able to walk away with, I shot on my, like, early model iPhone or something at night. It looks horrible to me, but it was so colorful. I mean, to watch those dances and the people doing it. Even a guy I'll never forget out in the powwow in full military, marine dress blues with like a headset on, a headdress on. But this guy was full on,
Mm.
U.S. soldier, Marine decorated soldier. I mean, it just looked awesome. But he's out there doing the native dances
Mhm.
in full dress blues with also some, ceremonial headgear, as I recall. But we just didn't really get to shoot those things. But
Yeah.
so
Oh,
maybe someday we can go back. I would love
yes.
that, to
I
get
have
a.
a feeling maybe someday we will.
I
But
hope so.
yeah, a lot of their activities, the dances and performances and stuff were canceled because of the rain. So
Yeah,
it
that was a
was,
disappointment.
but to see them dressed in full headdress and native dress from head to toe was
Hmm.
beautiful. It was
We sure ate some
incredible.
good food,
Yeah.
thanks to Cedric and his
Yeah, that
wife and
too.
mom. Oh my gosh. That was awesome.
Definitely.
So,
Yeah, they hosted us so
but
well, the Crow people. They were awesome. I shared those same fun times with you, but I gotta go back to the McAfee stuff because
oh my god.
when when we were shooting with McAfee, he was more than delighted when I said, "Can we go shoot guns?" He lit up like a
Yeah.
5-year-old. He's like, "Can we shoot guns? Of course we can shoot guns." So, we he took us out on the boat, of course, but we had been drinking before that. He had been,
Well,
making
because
us
he's
drinks.
well, I will admit to this. It was one of my tactics. I was like, "Hey, John, are you ready to start drinking and talking?" Because I figured he would. I don't think
"Let's
he's
speed this
ever
up.
not
Let's
wanting to
speed this
talk,
up."
but
Right,
yeah,
right.
he lubed him up a little bit, but
Yeah,
he's
with some alcohol.
doesn't
But
take
it
much.
No, but, he, before the pandemic and before he essentially told the FBI on Twitter that and the IRS and everybody else that he hasn't paid his taxes in I don't know how many years, he went on the run. But before that, he was doing these segments on Twitter and posting them on Twitter, his Mixology 101, and he would make these he would craft these cocktails that were just fun and very good. So, I was looking forward to that part of the shoot. And so he was making me drinks and they were fantastic. And he was showing me his, secret sauce to some of the drinks and all that kind of stuff. And then that's, when things started getting a little loose, I said, well, let's go shoot some guns. And he got all excited and he had just made me a drink. And he said, "You're going to drink that, aren't you?" And I said, "Well, yeah, but we're gonna go shoot." And he goes, "Because I don't make drinks for people to not drink them." And he was dead serious.
Yeah.
And,
Oh yeah.
I grabbed the cup and I was like, "Okay, yeah, of course." So I poured the drink into the red Solo cup that you see me holding on the boat that we went out on to go shoot because John McAfee said he doesn't make drinks for people not to drink them. And he was as serious as a heart attack. So
Yeah.
I knew that I
Oh
had to
yeah.
take that with me. I was afraid that people were going to think I was a raging alcoholic and, you know, That was not my choice that day, but it ended up being really fun. So I took the cup with me because I didn't want to disappoint. He went through all the trouble to make this
Yeah.
beautiful drink, and I drank it the whole time on the boat, and that's why I had it with me. But
Well,
otherwise, if you didn't know the backstory, you would think, God, could she not put down the red Solo cup for a minute? Does she need booze that badly? So that was the
well,
story behind that.
I think I know I needed some because this guy, I came to really, enjoy being around John because he's very engaging. But I recall, I wasn't expecting to shoot on a boat, and when you take, two shooters and
Right.
me handling audio at the time for that shoot, two guards, and that house right there up on the left, that's John's house. That's a shot of us coming back from this little,
Yeah, but we had
adventure. But
his security detail with us
yeah, and Janice, and
and
then we're
Janice.
leaving that channel, and I'll never forget. I'm just, I'm trying to get microphones ready and trying to get, audio set and all these things that you got to do, and coordinating with my, with Bud, who's our director of photography, and saying, look, man, here's what before I could even really talk to him about it, John goes, "Hey, you guys need to hang on. I got to go super fast through this channel to get out to the open water." And I'm like, "Okay." Well, he went as fast as that boat would go. And I just remember I'm bouncing all over the front of the boat. I've got gear laid out.
You're trying to hold the gear. All of you guys are trying to
Water
hold
is
the
coming
gear.
in from all directions.
Oh
And I mean,
man.
I'm literally down on my knees, like face down over all the gear and just trying to keep in my laptop. Everything's there in the front of that boat. And I'm just trying to
Yeah.
keep it dry. And I felt like such an idiot when he brought the boat to a stop. Before I even looked up, I'm like, "Hey, John, which direction are we going to shoot?" Because we were going to shoot guns. He's like, "What do you mean, you idiot? We got to shoot that way. There's the land right there." Well, I felt like we were
We're in
80
the
miles in
open
yeah,
ocean.
I thought we were way off, the shore. I felt like such an idiot. And so then I looked around. I was like, "Oh yeah, of course." But it wasn't like he was the type of person. He doesn't give you. He's very generous, but he wasn't about to give us an opportunity to get ready. I
No, no, no,
mean,
no.
he
We,
was
we were
basically like,
definitely
"Let's
mm-mm.
start shooting right now."
We were on
And
his terms for
I
sure.
remember him going, "Oh, we forgot to bring earplugs or whatever." And I'm like, "Okay, well, you literally don't have ear protection." I happened to have had some in my backpack that I had with me. I was like, "John, I got some in my backpack." "Good, I'll
Well, you
wear them." I
had
was
your
like, "Well,
headphones too, right? Because you're
well,
listening
I
to
had these
audio.
on because I'm
Yeah.
always wearing
So
these,
yeah,
but
yeah.
these headphones to monitor audio, but actual, ear
Yeah,
protection.
right.
I was like, "John, but literally they're mine. I've worn them." He's like, "I don't care." He puts them in his ear and is just shooting like mad, his submachine guns.
Yeah, he's
And I'm like, "Oh my
at the
God."
side
I
of
mean,
the
I didn't even
boat.
have a chance to look up, and we're just like shell shocked already. But
And it was loud as
yeah,
hell. It was
yeah,
so loud, so loud.
yeah. So we
But you guys
managed to get through it.
managed. Oh my god, not only did you
Yeah, about
manage, we
fell
got
off the
great
boat,
stuff.
and coming back, it was the same thing. Coming back in, he was going balls to the walls, and I'm literally trying to hold on to Bud because he's about to fall out of the boat. He's shooting the whole time, and I'm like trying to keep him from falling out of the boat and I kept hold on to my gear. So needless to say, I was a pretty stressed out dude when we
Oh
got back
man.
to John's
Yeah.
house. And
That
fortunately, John was like, "Okay, I'm 72 years old. I'm going to take a nap for a
yeah.
little bit." And I was like,
He
"Thank
did.
God."
He literally did sit
Yeah.
down on his couch or one of the big chairs he had in the living room, and he's like, "I'm napping. You guys can do whatever
Yeah.
you want."
Started doing that, and then
Right?
woke up in just the right time and started talking to you and Sean. And then he comes to the kitchen, and I'm set up for an interview. I had an idea of how I wanted this to go. And I was like, "John, you ready to start drinking again?" He's like, "Hell yeah." I was like, "Well, I'm thinking if you could make, you and Elsa some drinks and then just start talking, and
Yep.
hell yeah." And he literally started making drinks like right then when I said it. I'm
Yep.
like, "I didn't mean like right this second." He's like, "Oh, well, you wanted drinks? I'm gonna make drinks."
Yeah. No, there's
And
no hesitation with him
my
at all,
goodness.
and he loved being the bartender. That
Oh
was
yeah.
great. I loved being his only patron there, and we had a
Yeah. Well,
really good conversation.
he gave us a lesson in how to make some sort of gin drink, and he told us all about gin and the history of it and those types of things. He was very, very, eloquent.
Knowledgeable.
But then,
Yep.
yeah, we put that on our YouTube channel as I recall. So
Yeah,
I think it's on the
that
blog.
particular
Yeah.
yep, that
So
particular
that's
conversation.
yeah. If you take a look, so we're also promoting the show that's upcoming called Adventures in Crypto. Adventures in Crypto with Elsa Ramon. But we've got blogs and footage clips and things at adventuresinCrypto.tv, and that's where we'll probably park the distribution for this, extension of that brand. So what about crypto? And so you can look for it there. So yeah, if you want to see some of those clips, we've got a lot of that there. Hoping to
Yeah.
add a lot more.
Yeah,
But
we do. We have a lot more from
so
all over.
what do you foresee, as far as types of guests we'll be wanting to have on our show?
I really would like to have people who were uh, sort of some people that who were like me who had no clue about really technology, coding, all the stuff that goes with some of this territory. Just people in this space call them normies. I would love to have people who just were living their lives and then all of a sudden had this aha moment and now they're full steam ahead in this space, but not just that, but people who have a voice too, who are well known. We're starting to see a lot more um, professional sports players, NFL, NHL, NBA players who are now big time Bitcoin advocates who are trying to lobby the franchises and the organizations to let them get some of their pay in Bitcoin. And they explain why. I'd love to have some of them on the show. I'd love to have people who have built uh, real world use products that people can start using now
Yeah.
to start learning little by little and dip their toes in and start earning some Bitcoin the way you earn points when you shop at particular stores to put
Yeah.
towards your purchase, things like that. There are all kinds of fun things that have been built during these last couple of years that anyone can have and try and start earning little bits of Bitcoin while they're learning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very low risk. And that's what I want. I want the least intimidating people to be able to articulate why it's important and why they feel that others should find it important too. I don't want this to be intimidating in any way. I want everyone to benefit from this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, we're here to help people learn, and learn along with us, because the more we've been involved with this, the more we realize how much we need to learn, and I really have through all of this journey taken a real interest in money and where how the sort of history of it and how we get our money and the whole Federal Reserve thing, which is a mind blower to me. I wrote about that on our blog, my feelings about that. And you remember I took you to the Federal Reserve to shoot sort of a
Yeah.
closing shot for for the pilot,
Yep.
because that's where it all kind of starts. And,
Right.
and here we are at, just after the halving or the halvening or whatever. And for those of you that don't know what that means, there's only 21 million Bitcoin that will ever be made. And already, and I'm riffing here, but it's something like 17 or 18 million of them have already been made. So they're already in existence. But, Bitcoin's really just it's a set of rules. It's a protocol, that people are agreeing to operate by. And that protocol dictates that there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. And here in the first, 12 years already, what is that? 80% has already been roughly made already and it is in existence. But every 4 years, only half as many get made. So it's ever decreasing the amount that come into existence. And that'll happen over like the next 120 years. So when this all started and Satoshi Nakamoto started the first Bitcoin, or minted it or mined it, I suppose, that first block reward was 50 Bitcoin. And every 10 minutes, there's another block that is added to the blockchain of Bitcoin. And then it has, and whoever wins the block or gets that reward gets 50 Bitcoin. Well, then 4 years later, that protocol, that software says, automatically we've hit so many blocks. Now you only get half as many. So
Right.
there was another 4 years of now miners only got 25 Bitcoin. And then another halving happened after 8 years, and then it was 25, what is it? 12 and a half
Mhm.
Bitcoin, which is kind of the epoch when you and I came into
Yeah,
really getting
yeah.
involved. And so recently, what was it, about 2 weeks ago, I guess,
Mhm.
was the next halving. And so now if you're rewarded a block of from Bitcoin, then you only get 6 and a quarter Bitcoin.
Right, like we
4 more
explained
ye
earlier in the
4
show,
more.
if you're giving the power and mining, you're giving your power, loaning your power to be able to validate the transaction on the blockchain, you get rewarded with Bitcoin, and
Right.
so
So
it
here
goes
I've got
down
a I actually
exponentially.
Elsa, I was literally doing this right before we did the show because I was started thinking about this. And I was like, what is the math on that? And this is very like rough because I'm not a mathematician, but I sure do like to work with Excel sheets.
I'm
But
glad you do.
so like I said, you've got that first epoch, which was, 50 blocks, 50 Bitcoin per block. And then, 2 weeks ago, it went from 12 and a half Bitcoin to now 6 and a quarter Bitcoin in 2024 ish. I'm going to offer the caveat that I'm not being exact here, but I will say it will be a little over 3 Bitcoin. So fast forward into um, just 10 years or so from now, every block will be less than 1 Bitcoin. Well, you can
Right.
buy one right now for, what's the price today on May, what are we, May 21st? It's like just under $9,000, I
Mhm.
think. Um,
Per
so
Bitcoin. But
yeah, for
but
1 Bitcoin. But now look
just to
forward
clarify,
to
you don't have to buy 1 Bitcoin all at once. You can buy
right. You
little
buy
bits of it.
Satoshi. You can,
Those
so,
little bits are
so
called Satoshis.
Satoshis.
It's
Yeah, and
it's
they're
like
what?
it's like if you had a dollar bill, you can break it down into quarters, nickels, dimes, pennies, kinda like that. You have a Bitcoin, you
Right,
can break it down in Satoshis, so if you can only afford $20, towards a Bitcoin right now, that's fine. Put in you
right.
buy $20 worth, and maybe in another week or 2, you can put another 20. You keep building and building until one day you might
Yeah.
have a full Bitcoin.
Well, so what is that? I think it's 8 decimal points. So what is that? 100 million Satoshis or something per Bitcoin. Like there's
Yeah, you're doing
100,
numbers now,
a
and I'm
100
like,
pennies per
"Ugh."
dollar. Well, there's 100 million Satoshis per Bitcoin. So I just started thinking like, well, it seems like exponentially those blocks become like next to nothing. So so let's say in 2044, so 24 years from now, when educate yourself, but it doesn't take much to see pictures of Bitcoin mining farms. They're gigantic warehouses of computers just churning away doing math to win a Bitcoin.
Right, and so if you've
And
ever seen those and didn't know what that was, now you know miners are you, outputting a tremendous amount of power to win that Bitcoin reward.
yeah, yeah,
And so that's why many people invested so much into making these giant mining farms,
and still
because the
do.
reward, the bigger the mining farm, the bigger the reward.
Yeah,
But
and
as Bill just explained, when there's a halving, that reward gets less and less and less. And listen, I'm the least knowledgeable person when it comes to finances and money, but I do remember one thing from basic econ 101, and that's scarcity versus supply, right? The more
mhm,
scarce something is, uh scarcity and value, then the more scarce it is, the more valuable it is. The more of it there is, the less valuable it is, because everybody
mhm.
has it. So think of that.
Yeah, think
Think of
about how the
that.
Fed has just created
I was just
trillions
going
of
to
dollars
say,
out of thin
yep.
air.
So every time the Fed starts printing money, printing money, printing money, it's watering down the value of the dollar. Water
Yeah,
down, water down, water down, until you get, like, it's basically, you know, you start out with a drink. You ever been to bars where you think they're watering down the alcohol to kind of stretch it out? That's kind of what's happening. You're not getting
yeah,
a full drink. Uh, uh, you're getting watered down drinks every single time the Fed does that. And my
which
hope was
makes
that,
everything cost more.
which, yes, everything costs more. You're the watered down dollars. takes more of those. It's a vicious cycle, right? So that, and I didn't realize that at all until I learned about Bitcoin. So I was just like
Yeah.
everybody else, like, what, I don't know what that means. I haven't, or most everybody else. I mean, there are a lot of people who knew that and knew how that worked, but I was just one of those people who thought, I'm financially free. I have a great career. I'm making good money. I can take care of my family. I'm not, I kind of felt that stuff was over my head. But I think that the pandemic at least has offered an opportunity for people to learn at least that little bit about how our economy runs, in that every time there's money printed like that, the dollar in our pockets, the dollars in our pockets get
Yeah.
watered down more and more and more,
Hmm.
become less valuable. There's so many of them. Why would this be valuable? There's so many.
Right.
It's
But unlike Bitcoin, the Fed can also take that money back.
right.
People are just controlling it and manipulating it. But
Right. It's so we're controlled. We're on the puppet
yeah,
strings.
yeah. But
And
think
so
about,
I'm hoping
uh,
people learn that though, Bill, from the pandemic, that
yeah,
they're seeing it in action. They're really seeing how this affects us. And I'm hoping that some people will have that aha moment and say, okay, maybe I need to explore
yeah,
my options when it comes to what I think about currency and what I equate to what currency is to me and what it means to everybody else.
yeah,
And maybe I should explore my options with Bitcoin. I'm just hoping that triggers that with
yeah.
people.
But keep in mind, we're not financial advisors. We're just
No,
curious people.
no,
Do your
I'm
due
just,
diligence, folks.
yeah.
But through this pandemic, I love to read, but I'm so busy. I seldom find the time to read, but um, unless it's some technical thing or whatever. But I finally, I've been very interested in this Creature from Jekyll Island book
Hmm.
by G. Edward Griffin, which I finally bought and have been reading it, and it's just a fascinating, sort of expose on how the Federal Reserve was created and how it really works and stuff. So I encourage any human to read that, because that affected our entire world and still does. And
Hmm.
but it's kind of a I wrote about that on the one blog post I did about on our website. But it's just fascinating to me that we just sort of let these bankers just control it. It's not
Yeah.
the Federal Reserve is not a reserve bank, and it's not
Not a
federal.
bank.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, but it's not federal for
Right.
sure, and it's not controlled by the US government.
Right.
It's a group of bankers. It's a cartel. So that's who we need to get. G. Edward Griffin on the show. That's one person I
That would
can't
be
wait to get
incredible.
on. I
I
want to have
would
him
not say
on.
no to that.
Yeah, we will definitely work on that. So anybody out there who knows him and can encourage him to jump on a podcast with
Yeah,
us, bring
come
it
on
on.
with us. Come on with
Yeah.
us. We'd have a
Mhm.
wonderful discussion. But yeah, when you start learning things like that, it makes it easier to understand why Bitcoin and blockchain, why we keep yapping, why it's so important. When you understand how that really works, the Federal Reserve and the printing of money, then it might resonate with
Yeah.
you a little bit. Just even type in Google, how does the Federal Reserve work?
Yeah.
And maybe start your journey that way. But it helps to know where you're coming from before you go
Yeah.
forward and see the
Yeah.
value of it. But I just don't want you to be intimidated by that. Bill and I mean, really dedicated to making sure people have the tools that they need and want to learn and make their own decisions, for
Indeed.
sure. Indeed. So after this podcast, we wanted you guys to get to know a little bit about us and our intentions, our motives, um, and what we're trying to do. From this point on, we are going to be inviting people that we know in the space onto our show. Hopefully, they accept the invitations. Also, please feel free to reach out to us if you feel like you have something of value to add for people to learn. We'd
Yeah.
love to talk with you and see if we can make that happen. You can
Yeah.
always reach out to us too.
Yeah. Info@adventuresinCrypto.com. Elsa's an avid Twitterer. So what's your handle on there?
I am on Twitter all the time. I kind of live
Yeah.
there. It's at Elsa Ramon on air. Um, and you can always reach me there. Of course, you can always reach me through the Adventures in Crypto .tv site with the website too. I mean, with the email that Bill just gave
Yeah,
out. It's
all that'll
also
be
on
in
our
the show
website.
notes.
Yeah,
Yeah, in
everything
our
will be in
show
the show
notes and stuff.
notes.
So, well, cool. Well, Elsa, this has been
Absolutely.
a lot of fun. We've been, this podcast and stuff isn't as easy as people make it seem. Hats off to people who've been doing this.
Yeah, I really
But
have a lot of
I'm enjoying it.
respect. Yeah, you've
Yeah.
done a lot of work on this, Bill. I mean, he's in Atlanta and I'm here in LA. And when he finally convinced me to do this, he was like, "Really? You'll do it? Okay." And all of a sudden, gear started showing up at my house, light
Yeah.
kits and, mixers and these microphones and tripods. And, we really wanted to make this as seamless as possible and as professional as possible.
Yeah.
Me being in the TV news business and Bill being in production and creating production value is important to us. So we wanted to make sure everything was just right so that there weren't any distractions so that you can truly focus on our message and the content we're bringing you.
Yeah. Educate yourself. If you're interested, it's all over the place. The information is there. So we're hopefully can help you learn a little bit as we do.
And have fun along the way and not be afraid to ask questions. I can't guarantee I know the answer or Bill knows the answer, but we'll find somebody who does. And, we're not
Yeah.
afraid to admit that. If you don't know, you don't know.
Indeed.
Well, if you guys have been watching us on the live stream, thank you. It's been fun. I didn't think we'd go on this long, Bill, but it's been really fun reliving some of those memories and letting people know what we're all about. And we hope to just start out with maybe 2 podcasts a week, and we'll see what happens after that, the response and where we go from there. But I really appreciate you guys being part of the inaugural podcast. Very
Yeah, and
honored you're here.
don't be afraid to give us a good review. That drives everything. Absolutely. Yeah. Go
Right.
to iTunes and give us a good review. We'll be distributing this on iTunes, Stitcher. Oh man, all of them. You name it. We'll be on every platform, but especially, it seems like iTunes kind of drives everything. So that's a place where if you can get some good reviews, good legit reviews, if you like it, we'd love if you could drop us some love there, and that helps
Yeah.
drive our visibility.
Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you next time on So What About Crypto?
All right, Elsa, that's a wrap.
That is a wrap on the first one. You did it, Bill. You
Yeah.
made
So,
me do it.
we're
You
still
convinced
live, so people get to see that, we are actually doing a show that's
Yes.
a live stream. But, that's part of what we want with this live stream part is to people to see that we're here putting it together. It'll be polished up later.
Piece by piece, little by little, we'll get there. And
Mhm.
I'd like to get to a point too. Well, now people can email us questions if they want, or reach out to me on Twitter. And what we'll try to do for the next show is, I'd love to read the questions from people who've emailed
Yeah.
them to us or tweeted me, sent me a DM or something, and address whatever their question is.
Yeah.
Until we can actually get live phone calls. That would be kind of cool.
Yeah, definitely. We'll work on some of those. We can do that, but it
Yeah,
won't
but
be
baby
everything.
steps.
But yeah.
Baby
All right,
steps.
we're signing off. See you next time.
Bye, everyone.